Miriam Elizabeth Rodriguez Martinez was an ordinary woman living in the small town of San Fernando, Tamaulipas, Mexico. Born in 1960, she led a peaceful life despite the ever-present danger lurking in the shadows of her community. The escalating violence in her city due to ongoing cartel turf wars had already driven most of her family away. But Miriam's daughter, Karen Alejandra Salinas Rodriguez, refused to leave. The 20-year-old stayed to finish her education and help her mother with the family business, unaware of the tragedy that would soon strike. In 2012, Karen was abducted by the notorious Zetas cartel, a criminal organization infamous for its brutality and ruthless tactics. The family's nightmare began when 2 trucks surrounded Karen's vehicle as she drove through a rural area. Armed men dragged her from her car, took her to her family's home, and tied her up. Their plan to demand ransom was disrupted by a family friend who unexpectedly arrived at the house. In a panic, kidnappers abducted both Karen and the friend, setting in motion a chain of events that would forever change Miriam's life. Zetas demanded a hefty ransom for Karen's release, and Miriam and her husband, desperate to save their daughter, took out a loan from the bank. In San Fernando, the situation had become so dire that banks issued ransom loans to families who found themselves in similar predicament. The couple delivered the money as instructed, but Karen was not returned. Despite the kidnappers' repeated demands for more money, Karen never came back. Her absence confirmed Miriam's worst fears. Refusing to accept her daughter's fate, Miriam embarked on a relentless quest for justice. Her determination to find those responsible for Karen's disappearance led her down a path of vigilantism, where she took matters into her own hands. Miriam's journey began with Sama, the only member of the gang she had met during her futile attempts to negotiate for Karen's release. Using social media, Miriam tracked down Sama, identifying him in a photo with a woman in an ice cream shop uniform. After confirming his identity, she began staking out the shop, watching the woman's shifts until Sama appeared. When he did, she followed them home, noting their address. But this was just the beginning. Miriam went undercover, cutting and dyeing her hair, and posing as a government health worker to gather information about Sama and his associate. Despite her meticulous work, when she finally presented her findings to the authorities, they showed little interest. Crime and corruption had reached unprecedented levels in Mexico, and Miriam's pleas for help fell on deaf ears. By the time an arrest warrant was issued, Sama had already fled. One of the men who crossed paths with Alex through the site was Forrest Hayes, a successful executive and married father of 5. Hayes, who had relocated with his family to a $3 million home in Santa Cruz, California, had built an impressive career working for Silicon Valley giants such as Apple, Google, and Sun Microsystems. However, despite his outward success, there was a restlessness within him, a yearning for something more that led him to the Seeking Arrangement website. The connection between Alex and Forrest was immediate and intense. Forrest was captivated by Alex's rebellious spirit and nonconformist lifestyle, perhaps drawn to her precisely because she represented everything his life was not. They met for the first time in November 2013, when Forrest paid Alex between $2,000 to $3,000 to have dinner with him. A week later, they arranged to meet again, this time on Forrest's 50-foot yacht, aptly named the Escape. The night of November 23, 2013, was meant to be an evening of indulgence, a rendezvous fueled by alcohol, drugs, and the thrill of the forbidden. Forrest supplied the alcohol, and Alex brought the heroin. They uncorked the wine, shared conversation, and began their evening together. But as Forrest closed his eyes in anticipation of the needle entering his arm, he had no idea it would be his last conscious act. When Forrest's wife realized he hadn't returned home the next morning, she contacted the boat's captain, who found Forrest's lifeless body on the yacht and called 911. Detectives arrived to find 2 used wine glasses and a fresh injection mark on Forrest's arm, no drugs or needles. The circumstances of his death were immediately suspicious, leading investigators to consider the possibility of foul play. As the investigation unfolded, detectives discovered that Forrest's yacht had recently been equipped with surveillance camera. However, when they questioned the boat's captain, they were told that the cameras were not working at the time of Forrest's death. Undeterred, the investigators turned to Forrest's phone for clues. It was through this forensic analysis that they discovered his account on Seeking Arrangement and the messages exchanged between him and Alex, revealing their plan to meet on the night he died. With this discovery, Alex Tickman became the primary suspect in Forrest Hayes' death. The search for her intensified, but Alex proved elusive, having left the Santa Cruz area shortly after Forrest's death. Meanwhile, detectives continued their investigation, reaching out to the technology company that had installed the yacht's surveillance cameras. To their surprise, they learned that the cameras had been functioning the night of Forrest's death, and the footage was stored on a remote server. It took detectives 3 months and a court order to obtain the video. But when they finally reviewed the footage, they were able to positively identify Alex. The video reportedly showed Alex injecting heroin into Forrest, who then collapsed into unconsciousness. Instead of calling for help, Alex was seen cleaning up the scene, taking the drugs and needle, and fleeing the yacht. This damning evidence solidified the case against her. Despite her efforts to evade capture, Alex was eventually apprehended in a sting operation orchestrated by the police, who posed as a client online. She was arrested on charges of second-degree murder, destruction of evidence, and transporting narcotics. At her initial hearing, prosecutors charged her with 8 counts, including manslaughter, prostitution, and several drug-related offenses. Alex pleaded not guilty to all charges and her bail was set at $1.5 million. However, rather than go to trial, Alex accepted a plea deal in May 2015, pleading guilty to involuntary manslaughter, prostitution, and possession of drugs. She was sentenced to 6 years in jail, minus time served. Alex completed her sentence on March 29, 2017, and was released from Santa Cruz County Jail, only to be immediately handed over to Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE. 9 days later, she was deported to Canada, where she also held citizenship. In a 2018 interview with reporter Amy Larson of KSBW-TV, Alex spoke publicly for the first time about the events that led to Forrest Hayes' death. She expressed regret for not calling 911 and explained that she had been in a state of panic and intoxication at the time, unable to fully comprehend the gravity of the situation. Alex claimed that she had tried to revive Forrest and had only left the yacht to avoid getting him in trouble with his wife or the authorities. Despite having served her sentence, Alex's legal troubles were far from over. Just days after her interview, the Fulton County District Attorney's Office in Georgia announced that a grand jury had indicted her on murder charges related to the death of her former boyfriend, Dean Riopel. Riopel had died of a heroin overdose in September 2013, just 2 months before Forrest Hayes' death. Authorities in Georgia had reopened the investigation into Riopel's death after learning of Alex's involvement in the Hayes case, leading to the indictment. As of the date of this writing, Alex Tickman remains free in Canada. The status of the charges and any potential extradition request still unclear. Due to the complex nature of extradition between Canada and the United States, particularly in cases where the death penalty is a possibility, it is uncertain whether Alex will ever face trial in Georgia. The story of Alex Tickman is a stark reminder of the dangers of addiction, consequences of poor choices, and the destructive power of unchecked desires. It is a narrative filled with tragedy and ambiguity, leaving behind a legacy of broken lives and unanswered questions. While Alex now claims to lead a stable, drug-free life in Canada, the shadow of her past continues to loom large, a constant reminder of the lives lost and the mysteries that remain unsolved.